on rare earth minerals is so stupid for the U.S. to spend years boasting about excluding China from high-tech equipment via chip restrictions and then whine and whine when China retaliates. I know. That's why it's so funny that, like, when we get a fucking taste, just even a little bit of a taste of what we've done to China forever, all of a sudden, it's like, how dare you do this to us? Trump threatens 100% tariffs on imports from China. What to know? Trump tried to play ball or tried to play hardball with China again. The inception point here, because they had a Madrid meeting, right? If we're gonna roll back the time, roll back the clock, Donald Trump has been Mr. Tariffs, right? As you guys know, he's Mr. Tariffs. He wants to do tariffs. He wants to dominate China through tariffs. It's a really stupid decision from the Trump administration. One that actually undermines America's global international trade design without any sort of like industrial base that we could have built in this time frame, so that we had some trade to protect, right? And as a tariff terrorist, a tariffist, okay, a tariff fetishist, a man who truly loves to molest the money, okay, molest the bag, put his grubby little paws all over that bag and molest it. Money molestation Trump has decided, or had decided after, running on the tariff thing during the election cycle, to follow through on it. This obviously caused a lot of chaos for many titans of industry, I guess, with the exception of those who are already closely aligned with Donald Trump. The ones who were closely aligned with Donald Trump did make out like bandits in this process. There was a lot of speculation that they knew exactly when Donald Trump would turn the dial back on and played the market in an effort to consolidate even more wealth in their hands. There's a little bit of insider trading speculation going on. Well, luckily, we have completely destroyed the SEC, so who's going to actually prosecute this stuff? Ain't nobody's going to do that, because he has destroyed the regulatory agencies, right? So all of that was happening for the past couple of months. And then obviously in that process, China being our largest trade partner, has a tremendous amount of power in the international marketplace. China decided to retaliate. Said, okay, we're stopping all rare earth minerals and magnets and things that you need for your defense sector from actually going to the United States of America. Now, understand that the rare earth minerals are damn near a monopoly in the hands of China. They have spent, since Deng Xiaoping, they have spent the last 30 years building the most robust extraction and processing industries for the rare earth minerals. It's been multiple decades at this point, and refinement and procurement processes. They have a complete control over it, and these are the materials, the rare earth minerals that you absolutely need. Now, rare earth, ironically enough, contrary to its name, is not actually rare. Like the minerals are not that rare, right? But the refinement process requires the refinement and the procurement process is obviously very difficult, and it would take a very long time for the rest of the world to build their own refinement facilities rather than just getting it from China. They would never be able to compete with the Chinese facilities. They would never be able to compete with the price point that China offers. And also on top of that, it is quite difficult for them. It is quite difficult for them to just like build a robust industrial base to compete against China anyway. And we certainly do not have the ambition here in the United States of America to to do such a thing. We don't have the control. We don't have a command economy that could very quickly try to build this industrial base. And also, even if we did, the training and the time frame and the logistics of building this robust industrial base to compete against China would take possibly a decade. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because China, for this reason, has a tremendous amount of power over global trade policy. Now, it's already incredibly difficult to build a competitive, robust industrial base in this country without completely restructuring the economy, completely restructuring the political economy, completely restructuring how America operates. Okay, it is far too decentralized and far too capitalist for America to even turn around and be like, yeah, we are just going to be a nation that builds factories now. Good luck. That's not happening. Unless we become China and overnight magically and have Chinese-style top-down governance and get people to work instantly, it's just not going to happen. Okay? Fake quote. I said, it can only good happen. Much more smarter. True. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen in the United States of America. And the administration has been a failure in every fucking capacity, except the only thing that they could rely on in this moment is China's interest in rolling back the clock to pre-2025 levels of trade policy, international trade policy, or even better, pre-2018 levels of global trade policy. Both of those instances are Donald Trump. Donald Trump has actively tried to start this tariff war with China and has failed spectacularly. So what has happened, as far as I understand, is they did this like tariff initiative, this back and forth, right? Both of these countries postured. And as I told you, China would, in an endless interest to trade max, would go back to the table eventually and offer Trump like a minor W, after showing the rest of the world how unstable and how dangerous Donald Trump truly is, right? So they did. They had a Madrid meeting where they got to a tariff stalemate, okay? They went to Madrid. This was a couple months ago, where they decided, okay, we're just going to back down and we're just going to go back to business as usual. You'll increase your tariffs. We won't buy your soybeans. We'll buy it from we'll buy it from some other country. We'll buy from Argentina. We'll cook key sectors for you. You'll try to cook our key sectors, whatever, right? But somewhere along the way, America started adding additional export controls. Okay, so then China, coming back from its national holiday, immediately we're like, oh, you're doing export controls? Okay, we're bringing back the rare earth minerals export controls, and we're just going to now have additional security clearances if you want to fucking purchase if you want to purchase rare earth minerals from us. And it's basically like a nuclear option for China. This is an incredibly important part of China's global trade policy in general. So I suspect that they're not actually invested in stopping rare earth minerals from being exported to the United States of America at all. Because I feel like that if they were to ban it altogether, I mean, that almost is a self-own. Because as long as they still control this, as long as they still control it and give assurances to every country that they can continue exporting this stuff or importing this stuff, then, people will go along with business as usual politics. All right. Many people actually do not have the full picture of this rare earth crisis. Here it is. 1, rare earth is not rare, but only China has the refining ability, especially the ability to refine heavy rare earths. Even rare earths from the United States need to be transported to China for refining. Japan and Australia are 2 main countries outside of China that can refine rare earths, but only light rare earths, and the cost is very high. Their heavy rare earths also rely on imports from China. The United States currently has some rare earth inventory, and the CIA has been working hard to steal 3 things from China in the past months. 1, smuggling rare earths out of China. 2, Chinese rare earth technicians. 3, China's refining equipment. Judging from Trump's current level of anger, CIA is not very successful. At the same time, China stipulates that any foreign enterprise that uses Chinese rare earths cannot sell products containing rare earths to buyers who have not been approved by China. Otherwise, no rare earth for you next time. Rare earths are used in many key places. The military industry enterprises, F-35 and nuclear submarines require rare earths. Automobile, both NEV and oil cars need rare earth. Ford almost stopped production due to the rare earth crisis last time. Chips, specific rare earth elements, dysprosium and terbium, required for chip manufacturing according to Chinese regulation. TSMC must obtain approval from China before selling chips to the United States. Even ASML has announced that their delivery times have been delayed due to China's new rare earth regulations. Aerospace and wind power, aircraft engines and turbine blades for wind turbines require the use of rare earth materials to withstand extreme high temperature environments. Under optimistic estimates, it will take the United States and its allies 10 years to build its rare earth supply chain. That is the most optimistic estimate. For the record, according to the current level of decline in their manufacturing industry, it may take forever. What does China want? Obviously, it's not 100% tariffs. I said a few months ago that China should trade rare earths for Taiwan, and I still think so now. I think China hitting the nuclear option on their trade policy like this is specifically done to say, look, we have a lot of power, we have a lot of influence. It took us many, many years to get here, but you can't just like fucking keep making these like ridiculous decisions to try to undermine whatever ambitions we have. America and its trade policy against China still resembles bully ball. It still resembles like the way America operates around the globe against states that have very little sovereignty. I think the faster America understands that China is a peer and must be taken seriously, the easier this process will be for everybody involved. And I'm not saying this because I like glaze China or whatever. I'm saying this because it's incredibly stupid, and we will just continue having these sorts of issues as long as America continues to be this like belligerent bully around the globe. You can do this to our European allies because they are vassal states. You can do this to the Gulf nation states to a certain degree, okay? Because their entire security apparatus and their entire monarchy relies on a constant flow of American weapons and American security contracts so that they can keep the public at bay if necessary. China's control over rare earths is worth reading closely. China clearly decided to show its full hand yesterday. It thinks it has the high cards, which it does. Okay. This is the most plausible explanation that people are pointing to, which is the Chinese are responding directly to U.S. escalation on export controls with a 50% rule rolled out last week. It was clear that they would respond to this, which was a clear violation of the agreement in Madrid not to take any new measures. Because remember, they did a stalemate, right? They went to Madrid, they had a conversation, and they both parties basically backed away. Both parties basically backed away from the tit-for-tat tariff war that they were engaging in. And then this 50% rule rolled out in the United States, additional export controls, basically. This was a deliberate move by those favoring decoupling at commerce to up the ante, and neither the White House or the Commerce were fully informed, let alone about the potential, actually, certainty that Beijing would respond. Let's get to the causation straight here. Now, this is speculation. Okay? Brad Setzer response says, Paul, that is a serious claim, and I would appreciate your evidence here as you generally lean against it. I read this Skadden report last night. The BIS rule expands export restrictions to entities 50% owned by parties on the entity and military end user lists. This is a new U.S. Commerce Department interim final rule that expanded the number of entities subject to export control restrictions by extending the entity list and MEU list restrictions to non-U.S. entities 50% or more owned directly or indirectly by listed parties effective as of September 29th, 2025. Okay? Greatly increasing the number of entities subject to these restrictions and requiring comprehensive ownership analyses as a part of due diligence will make it more complicated and time-consuming for exporters to ensure compliance with the law and increases risk of violations. From the Chinese side, they see this as additional export controls that America is subjecting to all entities, but technically it's one that they could use against China. The rule applies to all transactions subject to U.S. Export Administration regulations, including companies with U.S. parts or technologies in their supply chains whether based in the U.S. or not. So then, why Brad Setzer says that's a serious claim. I would appreciate your evidence here as you generally lean against most U.S. controls, starting with the backgrounds, as I haven't followed closely. Why is the 50% rule existential for China in a way that other export controls were not? I did not say existential, Paul retorts. He says the 50% rule was pushed out by Commerce just before shutdown. It could impact as many as 10,000 companies. Both sides of Madrid agreed not to do just this type of thing during negotiations. Beijing's response was delayed by national holiday, but is the direct response to U.S. action, which was not approved at cabinet level. Clearly, no one told the president that Beijing would respond and strongly breach the solemn agreement at Madrid. I think this, of all the reasons I read, seems to be the most plausible explanation for why China suddenly announced new rare earth export controls is a direct response to what it perceived as a U.S. provocation and a violation of the truce. I think part of the miscalculation between U.S. and China stems from the different constitutions of U.S.-Chinese governments. I mean, this in and of itself is again more speculation that like America's attitude on international trade policy is more decentralized, whereas the Chinese one is more top-down, more centralized, and therefore when there are any decisions that are being made, the administration itself is not thinking about like Chinese retaliation and can sometimes feel blindsided, as they seemingly are today when China implemented these their own version of export controls for perhaps the most consequential one of the most consequential exports that they have. China's full hand will be total shutout of access to China's supply chain for U.S. businesses and coordinated dumping of USD with other countries that are looking to evacuate their reserve positions. People still don't understand China's leverage. I mean, yeah, that would be the most maximalist, most nuclear option of all time, except that nuclear option would hurt China's short-term and long-term goals. China benefits greatly from maintaining U.S. debt. For this reason, it's leverage. They are tied at the hip. They are tied at the hip to the United States of America, and therefore it makes it much harder for the United States of America to try and increasingly engage in militant escalations against China, because they have leverage. Like, they are in this together. Trade and China's irreplaceable nature as the manufacturing hub of the entire planet is part of the reason why it has been allowed to socialize without too much Western interference. Okay? This is very important to understand, because when you think about the Cold War between the USSR and Western capitalist nations, the USSR did not have the same network of trade that the Western capitalist nations relied on for their daily existence. Each F-35 requires 418 kilograms of rare earths. An Arleigh Burke destroyer requires 2,600 kilograms, and a Virginia-class submarine requires 4,600 kilograms. With the majority of U.S. imports coming from China, unprecedented crisis. Do you understand now? This is just some of the things. China is the manufacturing hub of the planet. So attacking China like this with a weird tariff war that nobody asked for, that redesigns international trade policy, is unimaginably stupid, especially because we get fucked over a lot harder than China does in this process. Okay? We don't even have a domestic capability to make up for the lack of rare earth refinement facilities that we would need if we were to decouple from China completely. This is, by the way, this is not just for rare earth minerals either. This is for everything. This is what I was trying to explain when talking about trade policy prior to Donald Trump even initiating this tariff war. The reality of the matter is, even if you were to go and like invade Greenland, okay, you still don't have the factories for refinement. You don't have the equipment. You don't have the know-how. You don't have the capacity to recreate these factories that are competitive enough that you can make up for the lack of supply. For China, this took 40 fucking years. You're talking about a country that operates differently than the United States of America does, where, you know, whatever their design is, whatever their goals are, they follow it through, okay? And they have a tremendous amount of control over everything that happens inside of this massive country. When they decide, like, we are focusing our efforts on building real estate, because they control all flows of capital, they literally will turn around and start funding those initiatives when they are like, okay, we're still going to continue developing, but also, you know, this has become a bit of a bubble. We're going to move away from this. Then they can do that as well. I think this, of all the reasons I've read, seems the most plausible explanation for why China suddenly announced the new rare earth export controls. It's not even new. This is something that they entertained before, in the previous iteration, before the Madrid showdown and the Madrid stalemate. It's a direct response to what it perceives the U.S. provocation and violation of the truce. I think part of the miscalculation between U.S. and China stems from the different constitutions of the U.S. and Chinese governments. China's government is more top-down, centralized, and its policies are consistent mostly. U.S. government can be more decentralized with different power centers, factions, and varying degrees of hawkishness. Hence, policies are not necessarily mutually consistent, and Trump famously likes it this way, a team of rivals. So from Beijing's perspective, the U.S. seems inconsistent and repeatedly reneges promises. By this point, I think Beijing also understands that this is just a feature of U.S. government, but they are like, we don't care. We'll respond to your policies in their entirety as though they are made from a unified perspective, even if they all seem at times mutually contradictory and inconsistent, and all set policies in response accordingly. This is a quant researcher at Bloomberg. I think China wants stability. They have shown that they want stability more than anything else. And America keeps showing instability. America keeps behaving in increasingly belligerent ways. And I think this is the reason why China is showing its hand here. But I don't think they'll follow through on this. And the reason why I don't think they'll follow through on this is because it would truly brick international trade, which is ironically what they are trying to stop from happening. Okay? So sometimes you have to play hardball in order to get America back to the table and show them your capabilities so that you can force America to behave in a consistent manner. That is what I think is going on here.
Economy now and fears that many of the things you buy could get a lot more expensive after President Trump threatened stiff new tariffs on imports from China. The markets didn't like it either. The Dow, NASDAQ, and S&P 500 all closing down sharply on Friday. NBC's Julie Sirkin is at the White House for us with more on these tariffs. Julie, good morning.
Laura, good morning. Yeah, that threat from President Trump on new Chinese tariffs is immediately having an impact on the economy and on your wallet. The S&P slide was the biggest drop since global tariffs were announced back in April. This latest tariff rate will be at a 100% rate, and that's on top of already existing taxes on everything from steel and aluminum, currently at 50%, to toys and furniture. Trump on social media writing the new tariffs would begin next month and are in response to China taking a, quote, extraordinarily aggressive position on trade because China announced major restrictions on exporting rare earth minerals, with China, remember, supplying 90% of those minerals to the rest of the world. Now, those minerals are critical because they're used to make phones, cars, and airplanes, even military equipment, and tensions have been escalating between Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping for months. The two leaders are in a back-and-forth trade war, but are set to meet in person in 2 weeks in South Korea. But here's the thing, the president suggested he could cancel that meeting based on China's latest moves. Laura?
Hey, thanks for watching.
So, yeah, the markets took a nosedive yesterday after China said we're enforcing new tighter export controls on rare earth minerals. It's so stupid for the U.S. to spend years boasting about excluding China from high-tech equipment via chip restrictions and then whine and whine when China retaliates. I know. That's why it's so funny that, like, when we get a fucking taste, just even a little bit of a taste of what we've done to China forever, all of a sudden, it's like, how dare you do this to us? It's very clear that China just wants to keep doing trade. They have their own goals. They have their own ambitions. They have their own plans on how international trade should work. It was a design that America enforced upon the world. It was a design that Western capitalists enforced upon the world. It was quite beneficial for the labor aristocracy. Okay, and now Donald Trump has decided to brick it. Okay. He decided to brick it for no reason other than because he loves money molestation. I think China's goals here are simply to roll back the clock on the tariff mania. Okay. That's it. Meanwhile, Bitcoin also tanked. Breaking, look at this. A new crypto account was opened yesterday morning, 30 minutes before Trump's announcement of 100% tariffs on China. It had a huge multi-million-dollar levered Bitcoin short position. The market dumped. The trader made a profit of $192 million in dollars in 2 hours. Unusual. Is it unusual? Things that used to be previously unusual are now becoming much more usual, I would say. This has happened every single time. Insider trading has happened every single time. Not just on the crypto market, but also on the stock market as well.